Welcome to Social Sessions. Today we are with Stephanie Bruce, where we will go on a transformative exploration of spirituality, healing and personal growth. For years, Stephanie has been on an incredible path of self-discovery, embracing the realms of Reiki, mediumship and spirituality, to name a few, as guiding forces in her life. Today I'm honoured to share the wisdom and insights that she has gained. In this podcast, we'll delve into the profound healing power of practices like Reiki, the mysterious world of mediumship, and the expansive concept of spirituality in its many forms. But we won't stop there. We'll also courageously explore topics including childhood trauma and how it intersects with our spiritual evolution. So, welcome to Social Sessions, Stephanie. It's brilliant to have you. It's been in the pipeline for a wee while. So, how you been?
I'm probably at the best place that I've been in my life today.
Brilliant.
Honestly. I have got a lot of peace. I've got a lot of joyful moments. I generally enjoy most days. So I'm in a good place right
Brilliant.
now.
And I think that's just, like, we speak about it quite a lot on here, as just being like, that's what you want into. It's just like peace, joy, a wee bit of happiness in your life, and kind of ups and downs, and a balanced life, isn't it? Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm going to just take you back to your own. Obviously we grew up together, Stephanie, right? And we kind of hung about together, and we had some good laughs hanging about. But I'm going to take you back to your own kind of childhood, your history and stuff like that. Yeah. So what was it like growing up?
I mean, as you know, like the area that we're from, that you could kind of say that normal sort of upbringing for the area was there. Family life, you know, I wouldn't go too personal on that today. Emotional regulation wasn't something that was in my household.
No.
Sadly, that wasn't there. No, I mean, I'm an 80s baby. It's like it just wasn't a thing. But, you know, there was a lot of love. That, you know, despite that kind of emotional regulation that just was not there was a lot of love in my family. When I kind of go back to my childhood, I've certainly blocked a lot out. But it's not to say that there's anything huge in my childhood. Do you know what I mean? To me, I was a quiet little girl. I was weird at times. People would chap the door and say, do you want to come out? And I'm like, no, I'm drawing this picture. And I would just sit and I did draw you a wee picture. You know, I was a quiet girl, and my childhood was, I would say, normal, if there is such a word, you know. But I would definitely say that emotional regulation was not something.
No. I think it's something that like they're trying to bring into schools, and I think it's obviously something that's well needed. And I think, look, Tony Sheriff is on here, and she kind of spoke about the work that she'd done in schools, and the kind of place and how well she'd done with that, Stephanie. So obviously I'm going to take you on to, just because obviously this is quite a spiritual podcast, we're going to be like kind of talking about quite a lot of stuff. How did you kind of start getting into that? So probably when I was about 13, I distinctly remember saying to my auntie, I think I'm psychic. I would have dreams, premonitions, that kind of intuition was there. And she got me tarot cards. And it was certainly something that I never like fully understood. You know, you've got a book, you've got however many cards, 72 or something like that. I should probably know that. It was a lot to sort of memorise and understand each card. And so it was something that I was in and out of on the tarot side. Back to the party days, you know, when we're going on a bit older, this is when my tarot started coming back out. You know, I'd be at the house parties and I'd be like, do you want a wee tarot reading? And that was something that kind of became more regular in my life. But then life just did what it does, and I fell away from tarot. So that was like my first kind of touch of spirituality. I honestly think I got married, and when I look back then, you know, that wasn't a regulated version of me. That's the word that I'll use. And there was something that was safe within that marriage, you know, and it did kind of pull me away from a lot of turmoil in my life. But even then I wasn't spiritual. And I'm not fond of like the terms I'm awake, you know, or like, because all of it's spiritual. Of course. Even that, just being in that human form and whatever
way you're living your life is spiritual. So as much as I say I wasn't spiritual,
I
was still human. But I would probably say it was when I split up with my wee one's dad, my ex-husband. Obviously had my son.
Aye.
I believe he was some sort of a initiation for me.
Aye.
You know, like you said yourself, you know, when a kid comes along, something in you's like, I kind of need to sort myself out. I started dating, and I was dating this guy whose sister did Reiki. She was a Reiki practitioner, and she was a psychic medium. And I had a distant cousin in the family who was also connected to Reiki. So I had heard the word Reiki, but I didn't really know what it was.
What is Reiki, Stephanie? What does it mean?
So Reiki, so Reiki, so Re is universal and Ki is energy.
Right.
So it's essentially a system
of
training yourself to tap into that universal kind of energy flow that's accessible to us all. If you want to look at chakras and stuff, you know, it will balance that. It essentially balances your energy. There's 3 levels to Reiki. Do you want me to go right into Reiki just now?
You can go.
Because when I was with this guy whose sister did Reiki, I love this story and that's why I tell it. So I was sort of like, you know, ears kind of perking up. I've heard of this before, like, what is this? And I didn't know. I knew my dad's cousin did it, and I'm sure her son, he was connected also. We just all called them cousins. Didn't know anything about it, so I went and I experienced my first ever Reiki treatment with her. And wow, I was like, what is that? Can I swear?
You can swear.
So I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, it was something that I have just never experienced before. This kind of feeling of almost like a weighted blanket on you, but at the same time floating, and then all these weird emotions. Like good, sad, you know, everything, weird thoughts floating around, seeing colours for the first time with my eyes closed, just really experiencing that energy. So I had that and I came up out of it, and, you know, she said, how was it? And I says, really weirdly emotional around the stomach, and she didn't even touch my stomach, but I could feel it. And she says, you need to let go. You need to let it go. And I burst out grieving. And then she did me a wee reading, and it was wonderful. So this same guy that I was dating at the time, his brother also did Reiki. And then he got a new girlfriend, and she was a Reiki master.
So it was just off on it.
And I do tend to say to people, like, Reiki kind of finds you, and it always finds you at the exact right time in your life of when you need it. And I think it's something that's, excuse me, it's becoming so well known. Like, even the NHS now are like hiring people for Reiki and things like that. So it's beautiful. So it kind of finds you at the right time. So came to it, learned my level 1, which blew my mind. And this was, of course, my introduction to meditation. Because your level 1 Reiki, there's 3 levels. And your level 1 Reiki is, quite simply put, all about mindfulness. It's very, very similar to Tibetan Buddhism. And it introduces a really simple, mindful practice that you can use on a daily basis of just meditation, right? It's very grounding and it's very clearing. So for like the first week, I was out jogging and I was like clearing my house, and I was like, wow. And then that emotional crash came. And I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop. I had never sat down, and I didn't even really know what I was crying at. At that point, I didn't know. And there was just tears and tears and tears. And I remember I messaged my Reiki teacher and I says, I can't stop crying. And she said, it's an emotional crisis. Just let it out. Just keep sitting, keep doing your practice and let it all out. So I did. I pushed on through. And at that kind of time, probably this was around 2017, I was probably doing my meditations maybe 3-4 times a week. You know, like kind of round about then, so fairly regularly. And I was in and out of it. It wasn't consistent. I would maybe have a few months where I was like really consistent, and then I would kind of come away from it. And at that place in time, I was kind of leaning on the Reiki meditation practice as a, I'm dead stressed out. I meditate, you know, which we can go into later. So your level 1 introduces this, and it really introduces these kind of 5 simple precepts, are called, to live your life by.
And can anybody do this, Stephanie?
Anyone can do it. we all are it.
Aye.
You know, we all are the same. We all are connected. And as I say, it's very similar to Buddhism. So it's that mindfulness of just for today, do not anger. Just for today, do not worry. Just for today, be humble. Just for today, be honest with yourself and with other people.
Aye.
And just for today, be compassionate to yourself and to other people. And that is something that, the reason I say this is why it focuses on the mindfulness is because when you're living by this Reiki, if you like, it just introduces something new of,
aye,
just for the day.
Aye.
And it's not to say ignore it, because when I even today when I hear just for today do not anger, I kind of try and change that to just in this moment I'm not going to react with anger.
I know what you mean.
You know, because you don't want to suppress what's going on and you don't want to use that practice to avoid.
No, and I think when obviously like when you look at the emotions, and we were talking about how you regulate emotions and stuff like that, and obviously I come from a kind of background where I was in prison and stuff like that, and there's absolutely none of that goes on, do you know what I mean? And it's quite sad, because I think there could be a massive, I think there's a lot of people would be very interested.
Yeah.
The yoga classes not quite well attended and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? And I think trying to regulate your emotions in places like this, but I don't even think it needs to be the prison. I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but I think society conditions you in a way that maybe to try, that kind of doesn't allow you to take in any time for yourself that way.
If you think of like the word crisis, right, and obviously the way the world is right now, I personally don't consider that to be a social, economic, political crisis. It's a crisis of consciousness. And so, yeah, if you had these places where mindfulness, meditation was brought in and the nervous systems are more regulated, then the reactivity,
aye,
it lessens.
Aye.
But even then, this is still surface. It's still so
aye.
surface to energies and all the rest. And this is why I honestly, I've got such a love for Reiki. It's not my practice now, but that introduction, as you say, we're not shown this. We're not taught emotional regulation in school.
No.
We're not taught to sit down and just even let out tears. We're you know, it's...
You're probably taught the opposite, aren't you?
Get on with it. Get on with it. You're okay. Even if you have a day where you don't know what's going on, you know, there's something now when I have days, I just honour it.
Aye.
Do you know what? Today I'm tired. Today I'm feeling flat. I'm not feeling up there, and that's okay. And I'm quite like that with my son. If he has a really off day, I'll just go, right, fine, you don't need to go to school. And I don't do it all the time, but it's enough that he feels safe to come to me and even say the words, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but I'm feeling sad.
Aye.
And I'm like, okay.
I know, because obviously like your subconscious, and I think obviously that you'll know more about this than me, Stephanie, but your subconscious is a massive part in how, like, you could hear something a few days before that you start processing, and you could process that, like start processing that 3 days later, and then you're stuck on why am I feeling like this?
Yeah.
But you're actually processing an emotion maybe for a few days ago. Am I right? No, like,
yeah, right. You're making me think of, you know, one of my experiences in life, and it took me 20 years to begin to process that.
Aye.
So we do suppress.
Aye.
And I think because of the fast pace in life as well today, it's easier to suppress. It's easier to pick up your phone and just scroll. It's easier to binge watch the TV show. It's easier to get the junk food. You know, there's so many ways that it's easier to suppress now.
Aye.
Rather than it being a kind of programmed in thing, which I think from kind of our day and age, it was more just programmed, get on with it and move on. But yeah, I think that for me would kind of pull me into triggers and stuff.
Aye.
I want to come back to Reiki though.
Aye, no. Aye,
so to sort of the level 1 is your mindfulness, right? So it really just introduces something so simple. It's easy, anyone can do it. It will introduce working with energies, experiencing that, releasing emotions, but also just a grounding, calming, get your nervous system into a place where you can get on with your day, right?
Aye.
And your level 2 is all about oneness. And this is where you would start working on other people, which was never intended through Reiki. The man who created this system was called Mikao Usui, and he, at 12 years old, was basically a Tibetan Buddhist monk. He lived in a monastery.
Crazy, isn't it?
So spiritual. And he wanted to create a system that was simple for people to access some kind of path towards enlightenment. So at level 2, obviously it went on to the Western world, and this is me really shortening it down. And that's when people started treating each other, which isn't a bad thing. It was really nice to know that, actually we can blend our energy, we can merge our energy, and we can really work with that together and bring in some balance. And that's a beautiful thing. And the simple way to look at that is your wee one, if they fall, you go back here, you rub, you kiss, you cuddle, all of that touch.
Because I'm sure, like I was watching a thing, and it was actually my partner who was telling me this, that they'd done a study, and I don't know how they done the study, but it was through Gabor Mate, right? I love Gabor Mate. I'm pretty sure you'll love him yourself, right? I think I've mentioned him on every single podcast today, right? But
maybe you'll have him one day.
Listen, it was actually supposed to happen before Palestine and Israel started the war, but maybe one day. But he was talking about, like, if you have a child and you were just to leave that child and have no connection at all, that child will die. Like, actually, like, which is mad when you think about. It says you could talk, like, but it needs a connection. The connection is needed.
It's human nature.
Which I think just shows, like, as you more, like, you grow up, it's like I can learn more off my son sometimes than I can like adults. Do you know what I mean? In the way that he just sees the world as it is, and he's like in his wee fantasy world, and I try my hardest just to let him be. Do you know what I mean? But you do find yourself sometimes going, look, I stopped that, and look, like, you drew all at the table the other day, and I was like, ugh. And
Beautiful
I look at it, I says, you need to draw on paper only, and it was like, but it kind of, he's only 2, but he was like, that looks better blue, like, and I'm like,
it's got a point.
Aye, then he was like, nah. Then he pointed to the couch, and then that looks better pink, and I was like, oh God, wait till Fiona sees this. But no, I know. So that's collective consciousness, isn't it? And it's that kind of collective nature where we
connections
do, massively. And my pal James Dockett is huge on connection. But on you go, right? So
that's your level 2. So your level 2 would focus on that, and that's when people would start treating and things. This for me is where the spirit world came in. It was always there. As I started working with spirit more, these sort of flashbacks from childhood came, and it was like, oh, hold on, it wasn't nightmares. It was spirit that I was seeing. And that's definitely in the family. I know my sister, I always remembered a story of she'd saw my dad's dad. He was killed by a car before we were even born. Well, my sister was a few months old, I think. And she just says to my dad one day, Grandpa's there at the end of the bed, just standing. And then I think we all in the family have seen this spirit, this little boy in my cousin's house and things like that. So it was always there and around. However, life, you kind of go on and you're just numbing things and you're just processing daily day tasks in that kind of level. So you don't tap into it. But again, when you sit and you're grounded and you have nothing but you and that person, then you're kind of opening up this veil. You're kind of going beyond that veil. And all you're really doing is you're expanding your consciousness in that moment. You're sort of coming into your senses that we're not really aware. And then spirit can come in. Now that's for me. It might not be for everyone. Not everybody would want to work with spirit, and they might subconsciously close that. And it might happen for some, it might not. I think it would be very hard to avoid the psychic intuitive side through Reiki. Because again, you're so merged with that person's energy. Like I'm pretty sure even one day I knew somebody had a baked potato for their lunch.
Well, obviously I'm not going to, but the thing he said out there to me was very strange. Do you know what I mean? It was like I'm a big believer. I know, I'm a big believer myself in psychic ability. Do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people don't, but I'm a big believer in it. And So that's the kind of third level of Reiki's bringing in the
So Spirit's nothing to do with Reiki. Spirit work is nothing to do with Reiki. That's just when it started coming in for me.
Right.
And I did just approach psychics, mediums. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to work with this. I was knackered. I loved Reiki. Reiki became my addiction. And really, really wanted to practice on people all the time. And when I was practicing on people and Spirit and stuff were coming in and I started messing around with my tarot more and really pushing that, my energy, the vessel, which we only are for Reiki, you know, it's nothing to do with me. I'm just a vessel for this energy. It wasn't ready. It wasn't quite clear. And so I was knackered. I was exhausted, like maybe 4 clients in a week, and I was just so tired. And sometimes ill. So Spirit came in for me, but that's nothing to do with Reiki.
Aye.
That's just what opened that door for me. Aye. And this is something that when I'm teaching Reiki, I will always say it will open doors.
Aye.
It might not open doors to psychic spirit world, but it will open doors for you. Aye. Because again, you're evolving, you're expanding that consciousness.
No, definitely. We've had Carol McGee on here before, and Carol's she's a really good psychic as well, and she was talking about that as well. And obviously, there's been a lot of kind of people, fraudulent people that can, and you've had people like Dan Brown and stuff who say they debunk it. And then, which I don't think. I think what Dan Brown's doing, I think he's amazing at what he does, and I think if you'd had his ability, you would probably be able to go, I don't believe that. But he is such a good reader of
people.
Aye.
But I think the further down that I go in this, have you ever looked at like human design and stuff, if you went down that route?
I think I've touched on it with Sadhguru and that, like that, but I've not. I don't know. No, I wouldn't say no.
So I'm a projector, and in short, that projector in me reads your energy field before we've even spoke. And when I look at psychic stuff, I'm like, is it psychic though, or is it just that there's something in my subconscious that just ticks differently? It just ticks that wee bit differently, and it's read before I've kind of even tried to go into it.
Aye.
You know? But when you're then doing the psychic and the intuitive stuff, again, I come to this clear vessel. Because your ego's always going to come in. So like I'm doing this, you know, on a daily basis, and I will still have moments of that wee niggle. Are you making this up? Right? And it's like, just say it. Just say it. One of my favourite ones is I tell people I had to say banana. And it turned out the guy worked in a banana factory. You know, so it's just saying what's there, but your ego's going to come in, and this is what can prevent people from fully pushing into just their intuition. Because when your ego's so strong, it's not clear. It's like that radio station, it's that frequency, it's not a clear channel, it's muffled noises or different voices. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
So like when you look at somebody like Darren Brown and things, and any psychic and any medium, I do sort of go, I mean, I don't believe that ghosts just walk about. I don't believe we live this human form to die and walk about as a ghost.
Aye.
I just don't believe it. So I think it's something within our consciousness.
I think this is my take on it, and obviously, I, as I say, I'm nowhere near as read on you on it, but I think that this is all energy, like it's a massive energy field that we're in, and I think that if you pass away or if somebody passes away or whatever, I think their energy passes. And I do believe in reincarnation and stuff like that. I do believe that you can reincarnate as well. I do believe that, but I think that energy can go back into the
cosmos,
the ether, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And then it can come back
informed.
It kind of tap into somebody like yourself that's got that ability or has worked on that ability. Do you know what I mean? So that's what my kind of take on it is, and I've experienced it to some degree where I would say that I'm a big believer in it. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. Aye, me personally, like I'm absolutely no psychic. I've never had any kind of. I don't know. I mean, I might be. You know what I mean? A few people have actually said to me, I've got like intuition, but
again, everybody does.
Aye.
It's quieting. It's making all the other noise quiet to lean into that intuition. This is what meditation does, which will come to.
No, I definitely, and we spoke about it in a wee bit out there, and I don't know if I've told this story about me when I was up in Castle, and I did get into the meditating, and I was meditating daily, and it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I was reading Sadhgurus and an engineer, and I was reading really powerful books.
Yeah.
And I says to my pal, who you probably should know when you're doing law attraction and stuff like that, right? But I did say, I bet you jets come out here, right, in the next couple of days. And that isn't a normal thing in Castle. And the next thing, like, the jets came. And then I had this experience where I'd kind of meditated, my head was clear. I you know, that way I felt as if I was on a different energy field, and then I kind of brought in that I wanted to see a bird of prey taking like another bird out of the sky, and I actually felt bad after it because I was like, I can't believe I've done that. But anyway,
it's nature.
I know that's nature. But we were walking around an exercise yard in Castle with hundreds of people running about, and a bird came right out the sky and right in front of me, and I was pure happy. So my pal was going, "Oh, you're going to like slagging me," kind of thing. And then I went to my mum's and a home leave, and I looked at the back garden, and I'm pretty sure it looked like it was the same bird. Honestly, it was a beautiful golden hawk, and I was like, Fiona, look, and that flew away, and then I just kind of I fell away, and I could feel myself kind of losing that. But when I was on that different energy, you might be able to explain this to me. When I was on, see, small talk and that, it wasn't. I could see past it. It was as if I was above it. It was just like, it wasn't like the jail politics, jail stuff and that. It was like, I just wasn't, like, it just wasn't anything to me. I couldn't be bothered getting involved in it. But I could see everything for what it was.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
And
but
I would say, I would say there's no above. Like, there's no, you know, as above, so below.
Aye.
It's all one. But I think what happens is, as you say, it's that perception, it's that intuition, it's that understanding, it's the compassion, it's the conscious state of your mind. All of that is evolving. And when you come to moments of looking at that bird and stuff, okay, this for me is, it goes so deep. This for me is when you can go, but everything around you is created by you for you. And so in that moment you asked for a sign, but it was already going to be there, which you maybe knew.
Oh, no,
Does that make sense?
Totally, because I was working on, I was reading just like loads of, I was reading like older books. I can't remember, is it Goffrey? One of the first law of attraction books I read.
Right.
It was like,
I'm not big on law of attraction.
This was like a 1600s, 1700s, this book, I'm sure, and it was talking about like Da Vinci and that, and how they were kind of and doing things like that.
Da Vinci, Einstein, all of them. They were all looking into all of it.
And I go, so there was, as you say, there was things happening, but it was just, I don't know how to explain it, but you're just, it's just what you say. It's like it's that you just, I think your level of consciousness just rises, and but I think it's very easy to fall back down, Stephanie.
So this for me would come to your nervous system, and why the consistency is key.
It
has to be. I think, you know, even if I bring it back to when I connected into this Reiki energy and learned all about it and was using it, I was using it as I need to chill out. I've had a stressful day, I need to sit down. And once you pull in a practice, and the word practice is so important, so important, because you said, what, for 3 weeks you were meditating? Imagine that was 3 years of every single day.
I know.
You know, I imagine that growth. And it's not to say that you won't have rocky moments. You're always going to have your ups and downs, but what happens is because you're constantly sitting, and when we're going into this meditation, we're kind of training the ego to go silent. And it never will.
No.
But we're then training ourselves to just observe. And you're closing your eyes and you're just observing. And the more and more frequently we do this, as you'd said, you observe more. And so the dramas and all the stuff going on, you're sort of looking at that from a different perspective because you're able to observe it rather than get sucked in. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Excuse me.
No, it totally makes sense. And I think, like, honestly, I've been doing to Jim McFadden's Vortex Centre. I must admit, Jim's absolutely amazing. I think they should try it. I think it's like a great place. And
was this the ice baths? Was this all of that?
So what we've done with Jim is we were in and you go in and you do a meditating practice, breathing. Then you do the ice bath and stuff like that. So it's all about intention with Jim, and he's really good at what he does. Do you know what I mean? And I must admit, it's the couple of times I've been down there, I took my cousin down and we had a great experience. That thing when you're going to try to do it daily and stuff, and it's hard. I think it's harder than some people make it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not as easy, and when you're living with a lot of trauma that hard to process, I think that it easily gets stole back. You can get stole back into that life, and listen, I've met some magical people in my life. Do you know what I mean? And everybody's different. And I think I think people should be allowed to find their own way, but and stuff. Do you know what I mean? I think that's important.
100%. I am a massive advocate for meditation, though. You'd use the word intent there. This is where your level 3 Reiki would come in. It really, really allows us to understand, how much of an impact your mind can have, and where your intention is. It's really that, where thought goes, energy flows.
Definitely.
Kind of thing.
I use
and
that
obviously
saying
it
quite a lot,
teaches you how to connect people, which they're already connected. I do even question myself, is it some sort of a placebo thing? But either way, it's beautiful, and you still need somebody to teach you about the practice and to give you the history and things. But I think when it comes to like complex traumas and things like this, we need therapy. Therapy and just talking about it is something that's going to initiate that sudden realisation of what has been making you project the way that you have, or making you live the way your life that you have, and maybe making you not evolve and go back. You said you kept on going back. You said you read the Sadhguru stuff, so kind of talking about that ego separation makes sense to you?
Totally.
It's brutal.
I know.
We're always so locked on to external. We're always so locked on to identity. And sadly, the word trauma, even in this day and age, all over social media, it is a bit of a buzzword.
Totally.
And I even had a conversation just yesterday, and she'd mentioned something about trauma, and I says, but is it trauma though, or is it just a program? Was this just a learned behaviour? Because I think people are too quick to say, trauma. That was my trauma. Trauma is trauma.
No,
and trauma
definitely.
does need professional people who have studied the brain, who have studied that cognitive behaviour system, who have studied that nervous system, right? But I don't think that we should lock ourselves on to such a long journey with constantly pulling at the trauma and pulling at our wounds and pulling at the talking of. I think we have to definitely talk about it, get the therapy, have the kind of epiphanies, I feel like, or the realisations of why you tick the way that you tick. For me, it's triggers and patterns.
No, definitely.
Triggers and patterns is where we have to look, okay? Patterns for me is a big one. And, if you want to go into that bigger picture, you look at literally all the patterns in earth, nature, everything. Everything's pattern. Everything. Down to the whatever.
The molecular level and stuff.
Yes, that's the word I couldn't get. It's wild.
I know.
And so you can simplify us. And look at our patterns. Look at our patterns in behaviours. Look at our patterns in relationships. Look at our patterns from a trigger. And once we recognise these patterns, then we can choose. We choose to step off of that cycle. But again, if our nervous system is not in a place to cope with the trigger to understand that we're lost in a pattern. You don't see it because that identity, that ego, that blame, shame, guilt, fear, it's all fear. It's so strong.
I know. We talk about fear-driven things. Is I think people get fear, anxiety, trauma, and all that mixed up. I think
100% agree.
I've got a big problem with that, with trauma and stuff. I think trauma is certainly a thing. It's a huge thing, actually. It's probably there's so much of it in the world, but as you say, like, and I do believe LJ, when LJ says, look, there is a stage where you just need to let go, and I'm aware on that, and I think 100%. She's so right. You need to step outside victimhood and challenge that. Some people will always stay in that victimhood, and it's a shame. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. No, on you go, Stephanie. I don't know.
No, when I kind of see something coming in, and it's like you said there, you know, some people stay in that victimhood, but again, it comes to they're not aware.
No, awareness is huge.
Like you're not aware that you're projecting onto the closest people. You're not aware that you were triggered by something, you know. You're not aware that sometimes they're not even aware of that deep trauma.
I know.
So it's a difficult thing, and this again for me is why meditation is so beneficial in your life.
Aye.
Because if we look at, you know, this right now and imagine it like just like it's a still frame after still frame after still frame, you know, this all comes to that, it's all illusion. And when you sit in and you tap into that energy field, you tap into God, source, divine, whatever you want to call it, you transcend past that self-identity, that ego, even if just for a snippet, then you're meeting reality.
Aye.
And so those things that you have experienced, or those experiences you're going through in life in that moment, whether you're having a difficult time with your relationship, whether you're going through some grief, you know, whether you've lost your job, whatever it may be, your car's breaking down, you've got no money. If you are consistently pulling yourself to sit every single day and meditate, then you're going to see reasons behind why this is playing out the way it's playing out, and you're going to see solutions. But you're also going to see like it just is what it is.
No, like I remember, I can't remember if it was Sadhguru, or it was somebody, or Eckhart, I can't remember. It was either Sadhguru or Eckhart Tolle, when they basically, the book I was reading, they were saying like, just keep asking why, and you'll get rid of emotion. And I was like, what do you mean that? So I kind of used my own stuff that had happened to myself, and I basically said, why did that happen? And then I said, like, people were just doing their job. Like, that's why that happened. It wasn't anything personal. Then it was like, why? And then it's like, well, why not? Like, it was, do you know what I mean? You're like, you're young, these things happen, bad things happen, but why? And then it goes right down to the whole bottom, and then you get to the kind of bottom where you can see it for what it is, if that makes sense, and just see that it's part of life. When you're with emotion and with any kind of emotions attached to that, do you know what I mean?
You can also use that though to sort of get to your programmed belief, because obviously the way that we act and everything, whether you look at it coming from the trauma programs and things, it is all your beliefs within you. And then what you're going to do, I was just having conversations about this last night with my boyfriend, what you're going to do is that belief that's within you, you are going to continuously manifest that in your life for your ego to be proven right. So for instance, if you believe you're not good enough, your ego will try its best to prove that you're not good enough. And this is again why it's so important to consistently dissolve that. You're never going to kill your ego. Like I do not trust anyone who says they've had an ego death. Don't care how much plant medicine you've took. Your ego's never going to die, because it's everything. It is part of it as well.
What is your just quickly, I don't want to go off tangent too much, what is your take on plant stuff, ayahuasca and stuff?
I've had my own experience with mushrooms, and I was really stuck at a time in my life. I was really stuck with a certain relationship, and I couldn't move past it. I couldn't move past the anger. I couldn't move past the triggers. On a sort of a logical, kind of analytical side, I could understand where the anger and the triggers were coming from, but I couldn't shift it. I wasn't as consistent with meditation at that time, but I was certainly big on it, and I was still doing, 4 or 5 times a week at this point, but it was very much meditations for external things, which I can talk about. But the plant medicine, what it did, almost like some sort of a kind of matrix kind of style, it was almost like I saw all the programs coming in, and I seen all the different kind of lines connected to me, which brought me back to the absolute source of what was going on in that situation. And it cleared it, as in literally the next day, I dropped it. Because I could see all the different avenues. So I think it can serve a purpose. However, I do think people, again, socials and all the rest, I do think people lean on it. And for me, it's a hard one because it can be life-changing, but I have also witnessed people go and take ayahuasca and their nervous system was not prepared for it. See, it was not prepared for what ayahuasca showed them. And I've got goosebumps for that one. And so if your nervous system's not in a place for what these plant medicines can show you, it can send you into psychosis. Like it really, really can be dangerous. And I think for me, it's that external chase. Like, I use Insight Timer, and there was a wee quote on it. It was a quote every single day. And I think it said something like, prayer and talking to the universe is just that. It's talking to the universe. Meditation is listening to it.
No, I think even the words, when you say spell, like you're casting spells, that's what it like. And I think we talk about, and I don't like this. I don't like this in religion because people are. My mum and that's religious. They're Catholic and whatever. And I think I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he was a prophet that was just well ahead of his time, just like the Buddha.
Light worker going about trying to do good.
Muhammad. I think they were all the same. I think they were all like, and I think humans being humans stole that kind of work and were able to kind of manipulate it to serve a purpose to control, which is quite sad, do you know what I mean? But I think that's only my take on it. But I think when you look back at through history and any kind of great kind of person, any kind of great, try to look for the word like guru, if you like, do you know what I mean? Like spiritual leader, it's a very similar story. Do you know what I mean?
But also none of them talk about plant medicine.
No, and certainly not. And I think that the one thing they do talk about is dropping the ego. Every one of them, it's give everything away, basically, if that makes sense. Give everything away and then you've got nothing to I think it's lose.
Just like witness it. It's just witness it for me. But I think as well, I tell people, like, go slow. Like, work on the basics. Work on, are you in a place... Like what I ask people now, I'm like, do you want to keep feeling this way? Do you want to keep feeling this way? Because if you don't, then you need to change it.
No.
So it's take steps. And this is, again, pull back to Reiki. Something like that is a beautiful beginning. It's just a wee door opening to eventually have you into this place where you see your ego, you catch your ego, you understand your ego, you understand your triggers. What I think there's a misconception with meditation is that you're going to be all zen all the time and totally chilled out, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I am so much less reactive. I even find that I've been now for 1.5 years, I've meditated twice a day. It was only 2 days, I managed one each day. And it's not it's just integrated in. It's just part of my day. And it's been so important to me. But I still have moments where I react.
I
only had a few weeks ago, I told my man to fuck off. But from the practice, what came in after that was, well, everything's self here, so why was I so triggered? Why was I acting the way that I was towards him? He's my biggest, he gets the most of my projection still. So with even twice a day meditation, I still have those moments, but what it does is it brings in this ability to sit with it again, because you know, going in, right, I'm doing my nighttime meditation now. there it is. Actually, this is a learned behaviour. This was something that you have preconceived in your head and you're trying to control it by acting this way. You know, there's so many different things. That again, it's like, this has took me years to get to this level of understanding self, and I'm still learning every single day. But I can't tell people enough of what that, like, I kind of call it like this backbone now. We've got, you know, even look at the chakras, look at the spine, whatever, however, if you need a visual. But if we are constantly walking about and this backbone of ours is only got our wounds, our anger, our traumas, our pain, our hate for the world, why is there war, all of this, if that backbone thing's there, then you're going to project that. I'm not good enough for this. I'm never going to move forward. I'm never going to have money. I'm never going to have that house. All of that. And this comes to your words or spells, so your thoughts in a sense. So for me, that consistent place where you're meeting that totality, that nothingness, that complete and utter place within that is everything, it's a backbone of bliss. It's a backbone of peace. It's something that you're meeting on a consistent basis that's just there in the background.
I like, see, obviously, like, you've been through a lot more than me, Stephanie, right? But I've had,
I would disagree with that, Sean.
No, like, obviously, no, on that front, I definitely know. But in the way that, and if I talk about spirituality, and I have it, like, as I say, I've been to Jim's Vortex Centre and it was magical down there.
Yes. I've
been to sessions with LJ, it's been magical.
Yes.
I've been to sessions with different mediums that have been magical. So I've experienced a lot, but I experienced my own thing.
Yes, so what I was about to say, so what are all these things? They're all external. But
they're very similar, right? They're very similar. They're very similar in nature, but they're different.
Yeah. But it's still external.
They are external, aye, and aye, there. Well, it's like we're always trying to fix ourselves, aren't we? Like, that is we go. 99% of the population are trying to fix themselves constantly, and I think I
feel like they should change that though, and it should be more like it should be that genuine path of get to know yourself.
Kindness, compassion for yourself. Get to love
yourself. Get to understand. Do you know what? I'm a bit of a dick at times. I am snappy sometimes, you know, like it's. And
I think that's what anybody who's an exceptional and listen to yourself, like, obviously you're really good as well, you can just tell, but listen to anybody that I've ever experienced that's made me feel that moment of bliss or helped me feel that moment of bliss, because it is yourself, you can do it yourself.
I'm so glad you said it. You can see me there as soon as you say they made me, I'm like, oh, you did.
But it helped you, like,
they helped you access it. They showed you a way to access it. And what I try and tell people is, like, if a guru, I'm pretty sure if you go back to Sanskrit, guru means remover of darkness or something. And I think if a guru is constantly having somebody come to them to allow them to access that or to show them the way, then they're not doing their job. Because you should, if people were to come to me, I've had people ask, oh, can I come back in for a reading? And I'm like, no. Go and integrate what I've told you. And it's the same with plant medicine. People will do it and do it and do it again, but you have to integrate what's there. You have to educate yourself to understand how you process this thing that we call life. And everybody is different. Absolutely, it's all self-responsibility, but we can't use that as bypassing either. You can't just go, oh, I'm a bit of a dick, fuck it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a fine line, and there is such I hate the word toxic, but there is a toxic environment within spirituality, boundaries and this and that, cutting them off. Really, we should be loving everybody as they are. Really, we should be accepting everybody as we are. And if somebody is really, really triggering you, and of course, when we have, abuse and physical, emotional, whatever, we can cut that off for a certain reason, but we still have to come into self. We still have to say, well, why did I choose that experience in this life Does that make sense? And it does go, again, it's such a deep level of coming into this, like, everything's self, everything's you, everything's created by you, for you. And at the end of the day, every single thing in life is spiritual. Life is spiritual. Like, when I come back, as I will, to the mindfulness and the meditation. So the meditation for me, it pulls you into this place of you're not actively seeking to be mindful. You just are. But it took me years of that.
Kind of like, I mean, the closest that I can kind of think is like when you read like The Power of Now, you know what I mean? And obviously, it's a great book for anybody wants to read it. Eckhart Tolle, I would try not to listen to him. He's very hard to listen to.
I like his voice. Yvonne was saying to me she doesn't like his voice. I'm like, I find him really chill.
I think it's like dead monotone. But I mean, his words of wisdom are amazing. But
he's smart.
It's such a fascinating world, and I think it's good that we're starting to look at, and people are opening doors and people are trying it. Do you know what I mean? Which is,
and that's all we can do.
Hopefully the level that is raising the kind of level of consciousness on the planet.
It's exploring. It's like, I'm so big on meditation, as you know, and you can see and hear, but I will have clients that will come to me and I'll say, meditate. I can't just tell you, go away and meditate. That's not going to work, because I'm obviously reading their energy. This is where I'll say, go and try the cold water, go and raise the dopamine levels, go and get a bit of that, go and get a bit more oomph in life. Like one thing is when people come to me, I'm like, where's your spark? Not always. I get some people who are glowing, but what I'll do is go, this will really work for you. And I'll have people come and I'll go, nah, Reiki's not for you. And I'll send them to my meditation teacher and I'll go, I think this practice is where you're at, because it's quite a deep practice. I'll have people where I'll say, I think breath work would be actually really beneficial for you. I think you should go and try it. So like you're saying, it's like, it's so wonderful that everybody is delving into this, because that in itself, come back to this crisis, it's not political, economic or social, it's a crisis of consciousness.
So see, in your opinion, Stephanie, would you say it's dangerous to tell somebody there's only one way?
Absolutely.
Aye.
Absolutely, because there's not. We don't know. It's like, even for me to be working with spirit as a psychic medium, I don't know what happens after death. I could delve in, I could do past life stuff, which I've done through meditation, or other people have experienced that, but I cannot say this is the way that it is. Scientists are still trying to work out the way that it is. I heard something the other day, or it might even have been this morning. I think you'll like this podcast. I'll give you the name of it. And they said that people are actually starting to say that scientists are the new priests. Because they're connecting, they're exploring. So there's never one way. And as I say, I am so big on meditation, and when it comes to your nervous system, right, and I can't take credit for this, the description I'm about to do is my meditation teacher. He told me, now I went to meet him after years of meditating. I was like, there's something with my practice that's just not sticking. I was going on YouTube, I'd walked down the forest listening to the water, I'd went and met the fairies, I'd met my spirit guides, I had done Om chanting, I had every meditation, shamanic drums, you name it. My Reiki practice was there, I'd been doing it for years at this point. But something wasn't sticking, and I felt at this point I was just meditating for the sake of it. I'm spiritual and I should be. So I knew, listen, something's not right here. So he had a course, learn how to meditate, and I was like, well, I meditate a lot. So but something's cool. And there was loads of synchronicities and stuff like that. It was Vedic, it's all Veda stuff for me. I've learned that if you listen to Sadhguru. And I went to meet him, and on his course, he explains it beautifully, and he talks about the nervous system. And when we come to our nervous system, and this is within our DNA from when we were cavemen and all the rest of it, we've got fight, flight or freeze, okay? And so every single day when your phone rings, when the traffic, voice noting you, I keep on getting U-turns with my sat nav, your fight, flight or freeze system is always in the background, always. And if we're not responding to that, this is for me my analogy with it, right? I love my cars, grew up with family, Japanese old cars, that's what we're all about. So I like to kind of say to people, if we look at that car and we look at that engine almost like the soul, right? Or the car is the body, the engine's the soul. That engine needs an oil and filter change regularly. to run smooth. It will go, but it will eventually burn out. And so for me, the meditation is the oil and filter change. So he explains it, your fight, flight or freeze every single day. He explains it like a bottle of Coke that's getting fizzed and fizzed and fizzed. And what the meditation does, you just open the lid a little and let it out.
Aye.
For me, you're just giving yourself an oil and filter change, and you're bringing your nervous system down to its least excited state. Its least excited state.
Aye.
It's not fight, flight or freeze. And so when we're doing that on a regular basis, we were just talking about it there, you're feeling the safety. You're not feeling fight, flight or freeze. You just are. And that's how you can move forward with the stuff. Don't know how I got into that.
No, like that's not always happens. I mean, you come out here with a framework and you always just end up going away. But it's this. I think that's what's great about these podcasts. And I think obviously I'm going to try and move on to like mediumship. We've only got a couple of hours, so I might kind of move on. But I think it is. I think it's been a fascinating conversation about meditation, and I think anybody that's watching should try it, because I definitely have experienced and I hate myself for not doing merit, and I'm going to try. I'm going to try and get back onto that kind of level. I'll keep saying it, and life gets in the way of life. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, but anyway, you should be able to do 15 minutes a couple of times a day just to bring yourself and ground yourself. Do you know what I mean?
No, so your nervous system.
And I know how effective it is, and it is quite sad that I don't do it. But so we'll move on to kind of mediumship, right, Stephanie? So we had, like, obviously we've had Cara McGee on here before. I've got a good pal, George Valentino. I'll give him a shout out, the new lovely guy. Absolutely love George. I love mediumship. So how does it work for you? How do you believe that this works?
I believe that when spirit want to work with you, right, which I believe anybody can work with spirit, because again, for me, it's just an extended version of consciousness. I think everybody has a kind of role to play with it. When people come to me, now don't get me wrong, I've had wee ladies coming in their 70s and I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life.
Aye.
So it will be very, very mediumship focused, where it's like, right, I've got this man, this is how he passed, I'm getting this date, he's singing this song, stuff like that, okay, which is beautiful. But the majority of my clients that come to me, I will tap into that mediumship side, but what I genuinely believe is spirit pull me to certain people. And I'll have moments, I love synchronicities, I love it.
Aye, same.
You know, there was even a girl that I'd met up in a mountain, and she was really struggling, and for whatever reason this morning I was meeting with two friends and I couldn't get at the same time, and I was like, look, go on without me. And I went up myself, me and my dog, and as I was kind of going up, I seen this girl. I met my pals on the way down and then gave them big hugs, and I kept on going, and I seen this girl walking down, and just out of nowhere I went, did you make it to the top? She went, no, I'm too scared. And I went, come on. Got her up, she couldn't believe it, she was so pleased, messaged me later, got each other on socials, hi if you're watching. You know, she was so grateful. And then as we're walking down, she told me my partner died 2 years ago. And I was like, So for me, that's how spirit works. Spirit kind of pull you to people when it's needed, and in some way I'm just you know, Yvonne, that she says to me the other week, and I love it, I'm stealing it all the time. She said, you're like a little spiritual receptionist. I just pick up the line, how you doing, what's going on, right, no problem, this is where you need to go. And that for me is how spirit work with me. So I don't always see, sometimes I can have the visuals, occasionally I have the sound, not often. For me it's more of a knowing, and when I'm in especially big events, I will sort of a tail off and I'll look away, and it's almost like my eyes are kind of flickering as it's all coming in. And I just go with it. But it's so hard to explain because I just know.
Do you need to be in a certain kind of, do you need to get yourself ready to be in that? Or like, say like the new, if I was to say to you, do you feel anybody run about me?
It's interesting, eh? So I used to be really, really like, I used to have little rituals, you know, I used to sage my house. I don't anymore. You know, for me, I learned that's a closed practice, and when we're wafting sage about, we're doing nothing. I used to have all these little things. I still do an opening prayer. I still choose to open to it. But again, it's still just a conversation with self. All I'm doing in that moment is like, right, I'm going to tune into this now. When it comes to, do I, talking to you, do I have things round about? No. What I find hard is when you start talking, I find it hard not to channel in and start reading. I know you could work with spirit. You were talking earlier and I'm like, And I think that's why you resist it. Okay.
Aye.
But I think because mediumship is moving, right? Mediumship is moving with times. It's evolving, it's expanding, and it's beautiful. And you've got a lot of coaches, life coaches or hypnotherapists and whatnot. There's so many people in this kind of spiritual healing, health, well-being industry who use spirit as they work. And that for me is all spirit is. Does that make sense? Does it answer your question?
I think so. You're basically. It's like it's basically synchronising stuff. It's not exactly like you're not doing it, and really,
you're
like,
just a channel. But even what you do with these podcasts, to me, you are working for spirit. That is Holy Spirit. That's all of it. Aye. Because you're pulling these connections, and to you, human connection is clearly something that's huge for you.
Aye, definitely.
And that spark, like what you've been through. You still have your spark, right? Not 100%, but it is still here. And that spark, that light, that's spirit. And that's why certain people will come to you. That's all I believe it is. When somebody's sitting in front of me and I'm saying, oh, well, I want to give you this name. And, the other day I said, I'm seeing somebody slipping on ice. Somebody died slipping on ice. Awful. I still think that's just a part of them that's subconsciously projecting that out to me. I don't think it's any weird ghosts walking about going, ooh.
I know what you mean. No, it's like there's certain people in my life that I fully believe are with me all the time. I get comfort for that. Yes. And I know that may be the reason why I choose to think that. Yes. But certain things have happened in my life where I can't really answer how it happened, but I just know that it's something that like that person would do. You know what I mean? And I'm like, so I do get this wee things like that. You know what I mean? And I know I do believe it's when you're talking about that thing. I've had a lot of people say to me, and I don't get it, Stephanie, right? In a way that people say, Sean, you're quite infectious in the way that when you're running about you've got a nice glow. I don't feel that a lot of the time. I really don't.
My dad messaged me yesterday because I'd shared your recent podcast. Was it the actor?
Was it 5-0 Jasper? No, or David Heyman maybe?
David Heyman. And I'd shared that. And my dad messaged me and he said, what made you share that? And I said, that Sean grew up in blah, blah, and I said, I'm coming on the podcast. And he said he's an articulate boy. He's got a light about him. He said he's much like you. Goosebumps. But that spirit, and is it that you've had your suffering, okay, and you're in a place where you're letting go and you're trying to live your life? That's what we have to teach each other. That's why we have to guide. It's that not living in the fear. Like, it's Fear or Love. Have you read A Return to Love?
No.
You like it?
I'll read that. Definitely, I've fell away from reading, and I don't read as much as I should. Do you know what I mean? I know I don't. It's like it was something that I love doing. Do you know what I mean? And hopefully there's a few things that could be changing in my life. Hopefully in the near future that could bring stuff back.
But there's always stuff like again, I say to people, I'm like, I preach a lot about this, but I'm also not oblivious or blind to when I'm in something myself. I have meditation for me has massively transformed my life, okay? I was in a place where I was angry. I wasn't dealing with my trauma. I was failed relationship after failed relationship. I racked up debt, told myself it was a couple of grand debt, and it was close to 10 grand debt, right? I was in such denial. I was binge drinking. I was smoking. I wasn't happy. And happiness is not something we can feel all the time, right? Because it's an emotion. I get that. But I wasn't happy. And what meditation has brought me taking responsibility and that moving forward, it's so transformative, right? My life, as I'd said to you at the start, I genuinely every day I'm like, what day? What moment? I know. And even when I have experiences, a wee slight trigger warning here, last year I had a miscarriage. And that was when I really, really seen how my nervous system was so much better at coping, and how my perspective has changed, because I found so much beauty in the teaching of that. I was like, well, why did I experience that? What did it teach me about me? What did it teach me about my boyfriend? What did it teach me about birth? And that it was incredible, sad, painful,
of course,
but beautiful. Without meditation, I wouldn't have got that. And so to come back to what you were saying about, there's loads of places I can change in my life. Of course, I still doom scroll, I procrastinate, I've got a massive addiction to sugar. I'm not there, right? But I am also honouring that human. If I want to sit down and binge watch Married at First Sight, then I'm going to do it. No, I know,
that's Fiona's favourite, doing it at the caravan.
Because all of it is just is, and that's okay. But what a kind of consistent practice of any kind will bring in for you is that regulated nervous system, is that resilience, is that bit more proactiveness, is that expression. I still have a massive block with my creativity. One of my sort of programs is not to be seen. Even this today, I was so nervous, so nervous. This is huge for me.
I know that's definitely.
And to kind of come in and do all these things, this is what the meditation does. It just allows it. But whether we can hit a peak level, I genuinely don't think any human ever can. We're always going to be up and down. But as long as our nervous system's okay with it. You know, as long as we're not complete self-destruct, self-sabotage mode. And if we are, again, it's responsibility. You have to come out of blame. It's not them doing it to you. It's not the world is a mess. It's not that they hurt you in this way and this is why you're the way that you are. It is you. It's your beliefs. It's your programming. It's your nervous system that's in fight, flight or freeze. Mine's was freeze for 20 years.
No, I think I've experienced everyone, like fight, flight, freeze, and another one, there's falling and on there. Like, and I think
that's kind of what I mean.
I think that especially when you're in a prison setting for like 15 years, you're constantly in that mode. You're constantly in fight or flight, and I think most of the guys I know who come out that have done a long time struggle with turning that off. Including myself. Like, I'm talking about complete madness in the way that you're walking into the street and you're like, when I was first out, like, I was like, who's that? And she was like, I don't know, like, it's the guy. I've always been standing outside the house for like 2 minutes. And she's like,
total fear.
Total, like, your anxiety's through the roof. And I think it's dead easy to blame. I'm not trying to justify actions or criminal actions or anything like that. I'm not trying to do that. But when you put people into that system and you don't do what we've been spoken about, you don't teach anybody to regulate anything, and you let people run away on a fight or flight mode, and you let them thrive in that, actually, then that person comes out into community and they're just going to thrive on that even more, because they're coming out and know they can make money or whatever. Like, so,
and it's all they know.
It is, of course.
It's that program, it's that learned behaviour.
There's no awareness.
It's
totally.
all they know. I actually thought about going to prisons, even just voluntary, and kind of offering just mindful meditations and stuff. I would like to.
I'm pretty
but
sure.
I also kind of dug into that, and I'm like, that's probably my saviour complex in me. You know, there's parts. However, again, it comes to, well, the schools are starting to introduce it, so prisons should hopefully be next. If that was something that, as you say, it can help regulate these people, and it can help them sit with it, because there's so much shame and guilt, and like, if they can just sit and let it be, like, what happens with our ego is we tell the stories and we run away with it. And again, I'll give another example. A couple of weeks back, I had a really rough week with no-show clients, unable to read people. I'll never take somebody's money if I can't read them.
Aye.
I'm like, it has to flow.
Aye.
And then I was supposed to be teaching, and it just never happened. There was illnesses in it, but, you know, so that was a massive chunk of my income, huge. Now, a money block with me, as you know, that I said there, that was a huge thing for me. And I ran away with it. I ran away with the fear. I was booking myself on a retreat, and I was like, I can't spend this money on self when this has happened. And it was huge. And I sat down and I went into my meditation and I processed it all. And in actual fact, from what other things were coming in and going on that week, I'd only really lost out on about £80. But I was able to see the stories that I was telling. I was able to see the blame. I was able to see the fear kicking in. And then it again brought back to my worth. You're not worth this. That's what meditation does for people. It's not, you know, the nervous system is key. It's absolutely key. But the more and more we sit with that silence, the more and more you face your reality.
I think meditation for me, what it done for me, and this is probably why I've no done certain things like that I would like to do, but what it done for me was it allowed me to accept the unacceptable.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Like I've no mastered that, and that's where I know that when I go into the miscarriage of justice organisation and stuff like that, I know that I'm further on than a lot of people in there. I can see it. I know that my awareness levels are a bit higher than most of the guys in there, and a lot of the guys are stuck. Listen, quite rightly so. Like some guys have spent 20, 30 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. Do you know what I mean? And then they come out and they're like just kind of left to their own devices. And if it wasn't for places like the Miscarriage Justice Organisation, there'd be nothing. So I do see how far I've come on.
Yep.
But I look at other people and go, but I'm not there yet, and I'm no like, look at him, he's flying, he's doing that, and you're always looking, and it's the ego, and it's very hard to drop that ego. Do you know what I mean? Especially when, like, again, it's things happen to you that you need to accept, and it's no me. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like you things will happen to you, and you have to swallow it, and you go, I can't do it. Like, it's so hard.
Well, that's why I'm like, life is always going to life.
I know.
And so what better way to have yourself in a place of total acceptance of what is in that moment?
Acceptance is huge.
Because you're never in control. One of the things that we all try and do is control. And there's this talk of like masculine and feminine energies, okay, and that's another podcast altogether, but there's, we're all trying to lean in a bit more into the feminine energy when we are leaning into expression, creativity, softness, nurturing, okay? But go further into that, there's still a masculine there, because that masculine energy is still needed to allow the feminine to come out, so the masculine is what makes it feel safe. Does that make sense?
Aye.
So, like you're saying there, if you're looking at other people and comparing and stuff, then you are still with the stories. Aye. You are still too in the head.
Definitely.
The kind of quieting sessions or the quieting that down, it's like for me it's the consistency. The more and more you do it, you kind of catch that little devil on your shoulder. It's like it's your dance with the devil, right?
Aye.
So for me, will I go into a wee bit of my story then? The kind of what the spiritual stuff opens up is inevitably to look at your traumas and your wounds and things, right? Because you're sitting with it. Now, when I was, again, there's a huge trigger warning here, and I'm not going into massive details, but at the age of 15, I experienced being drugged and sexually assaulted. Now, what happened was for 20 odd years, I was in projection. I was binge drinking, I was taking drugs, I was failed relationships, I was stacking up the debt, I was angry, I was a bit of a dick, to be honest. I was a carer, and I was still a lovely soul in many ways. But there was a part of me that was choosing that to prove that I was a good person, because all this stuff I'd suppressed because I told no one, right? So what happens is when you kind of open up this spiritual path, you're inevitably going to face these things because you're sitting with it. And what was happening to me was all these kind of meditations and stuff, it was there. It was even ones where you're visualising like opening doors, it was there. So I had to come to this place of letting it go, that place of acceptance, like you talk about, that place of forgiveness, that place of, okay, well, what has it taught me about me? Oh, well, hold on, this has taught me this is why I don't feel safe with men. This has taught me why I project onto men. This is why I project onto my dad, you know, my mum, all these things, because of my own stuff. It's always your own stuff. So that acceptance of what's going on round about you, when you can pull your consciousness into this place of just witnessing everything for an experience as an experience. Because it's all life is.
I know.
It's just experience.
I know. No, and obviously, like, listen, Stephanie, it's so sad to hear that happen to you, and it's another amazing kind of way to show how you've managed to accept that and deal with it. And what I always try and say as well is that I try and forgive people that don't deserve my forgiveness, right? But that forgiveness is for me. You can forgive that person, and sometimes you need to look at that person's background or look at what they've been through and stuff like that to see why they're being like that. Do you know what I mean? And that's hard in itself. And I've got plenty of friends, and you'll probably know them all, like, they'll go, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how can you even try and think about forgiving him?
Consciousness and all of that as well. What? I mean?
Like, so it's like, they don't get it. Like, and I get it, I understand it, and I'll try and explain it at times, and they'll say, look, it's no, and they'll say, like, I just couldn't forgive him, like, forever. And I'm like, I know, but it's no for
so
that.
I've seen, I can't remember his name. He was definitely a Buddhist of some sort. He was in the orange robes, and he described it like that anger. So it's anger here, and he describes it like the hot coal. And you're just holding on to it. Have you seen it? And it's like you're just holding on to that. You're just holding on to it, and all that's going to do is cause you more. So just let it go. But it's not easy, and it's. I think I'm kind of in this place now where I'm really trying to pull myself into just, you know, you are me and I am you. It's all one. It's all one. And all those bad doings, all that suffering, all whatever had gone on, it was still a part of me.
No, I get it. It's when you look at certain things and you go, certainly when I was in that place, and I was in the place of gratitude and for what I had, and forgiving people, and daily practice of meditating, going into meditating with intention of forgiveness, going into meditating with different intentions and stuff like that, I was so much lighter. I was on you just know you're on a different frequency. I can't explain it, but things happen, and as you say, I'm a great believer in you create your own thing, and you create your own reality. I believe that, and I think that's what the law of attraction is. I know you're saying you don't believe, but I think you can.
No, it's not that I don't believe. I'm just not big in it. I'm not.
It's not like
it's not a path I've went on.
I think it's again, it's been monetized into it, and it's like that's the thing where it's been monetized, and people say to me, well, how come I want £1 million then, and how do I not get it? And you're like, mate, it doesn't work like that. It's like you really need to work on manifestation, and it's not as easy. You can't just manifest £1 million like a minute. And I know Rhonda Byrne will tell you different, and other people like Dispenza and that will tell you different. And listen, I'm not saying, I read Sadhguru's book, and I believe every word that he transcended in that one moment. I fully believe that guy. I've got no reason to believe that it can happen, but I think it's very rare.
Okay.
What would you think? I don't know.
Well, it's transcendental meditation that I do.
Sadhguru says he transcended basically
out of his body, like
but like basically just out the blue, like he wasn't even he was very young, so it's hard for people to believe, because I believe him, fully believe him, but I don't think that's everybody's. I don't think that's everybody's experience. Aye, definitely.
That's just his experience. Like, I mean, this is like, it's so deep, and this is one of those conversations that could go and go and go, and there's so many layers to all of it, and it is the exploration, and it is everybody's experience. Oh, you experienced that? Oh, wow. Well, I get this, you know, and that transcendental meditation that I do is to try and experience just a snippet on a regular basis, because the more and more we do it, we're seeing it and we live it. And it's, for me, I'm like, when it comes to this that we're all talking about, I think there's such an importance of remembering that it's all practice and it's going to be steps. You can't just say to somebody, I bet you manifest everything in your life. That's just your subconscious and your consciousness. If they've not even looked at programs, cognitive behaviour, if they've not even ever meditated, they're going to just go, the fuck are you talking about? Right.
I know. I think we don't science and spiritualism need to come together. I think, and I think at the moment, I think it is coming together. I think we're starting to
quantum physics.
I think quantum physics has been a game changer. I don't know. Listen, I've not actually watched Terence Howard's Joe Rogan podcast.
I've not watched that either.
But it's supposed to be mind blowing. But anyway, I don't know how much. I've watched him and I listened to him talk about the flower of life and stuff, and how basically Da Vinci and all that were looking at it in a 2D model, whereas you should actually bring it into a 3D model and stuff. It's fascinating, like the stuff that he talks about, and it's stuff that I kind of get. But it's, again, if I was to show that to my ma, her level of awareness, I'm not meaning anything bad about you. Like,
sorry, Mum.
Yeah, I love you to bits. You're one of my favourite people in the world. But like, she would go, I don't get what you're talking about. Like, I don't, and that's fine. That's her. That's like,
and
her,
that's why there's no
reality.
one way.
Aye.
That's why there's no one way, and then, you know, you then also come into this place of total and utter acceptance that their reality is their reality, and not everybody's going to evolve and expand that way. And that, for me, again, could probably come back to spirit. Is that why spirit chooses some? Is it that we're here to try and raise that? Because I genuinely, get goosebumps again. I genuinely believe that we all have that little role in trying to raise consciousness. It's all we can do.
Aye.
But we can still love and honour exactly where somebody's at, because it is perfect in itself. And then there's also this thing that, you know, we are supposed to become more wise than our parents. Otherwise, there's no evolution.
Aye.
There's no point. The flower of life thing and stuff, there's a show on Prime just now, Inner World and Outer World, something like that, and it talks about, it's fascinating, it's, you know, all the repeated patterns, you know, down to a tortoise, and how that all, you know, sound vibrations, and we are just vibration.
I know.
Is it Nada Brahma, and
Brahma,
you know it, and the Nada just basically means sound, and Brahma's God. And as you keep saying about that vibration, whether I say raise the vibration or not, I'm trying to honour every vibration as it is. My friend, she's a music teacher, hi if you're watching, she always sort of describes, you know, these symphonies, and maybe one of them sounds amazing,
this is exactly
the other one sounds amazing, but two together don't.
That's exactly what Terence Howard's talking about.
Right.
And it's very above. You need to watch that, by the way, because I've not got my chance. It's 3 years long. It's actually 3 years long, and it's like a long one, and it's supposed to be mind blowing. Joe Rogan says it's the best podcast he's ever done, but I think what you're talking about is massive spirituality. But then if you look at Nikola Tesla, he's looking at it from a scientific point of view, but it's really the same thing.
It's all the same. This is what that inner world and outer world talks about Tesla and Einstein, Da Vinci, all of them. Because, but again, what does it come to? Patterns.
Definitely.
It all comes down to patterns. Definitely. And if we just look at ourselves, and as you were saying earlier, there's things I could be doing to make myself better, then I just say to people, look at your patterns. What is your pattern? And if you can recognise it, break it. And I'll still try and go into one of my patterns, as I say, relationships. Off you fuck. Aye. But this one.
Aye.
You know, he allows me to be in it, and he allows time for me to process what I'm going through, as I'm always going through something, because I'm deep.
Aye.
But there's something where I still have to remind myself, this is a pattern of yours. How are you going to change this? How can you approach this differently? But if I wasn't meditating, I wouldn't be able to do that.
I wouldn't be. No, and I think it's just a fascinating concept. Like, I mean, obviously time's going on here, and it's actually quite sad because it's like I'm enjoying it, and I've actually
we'll do a part 2.
I think we've only got to like topic 4, and I've got like 12 topics here.
Okay.
So. Right, we've covered a bit of mediumship, we've covered that as much, right? So
spirituality, I've been there.
Spirituality, right? So I'm going to talk about kind of healing wounds, right?
Yeah, overcoming
how
it.
Like trauma.
Yeah.
So obviously trauma is a Greek word for wound.
Yeah.
Trauma is basically, to me, I don't know, you can, trauma, I always kind of explain it as like just kind of similar to Gabermati in the way that if you've got a physical wound on your arm and you don't tend to that, it will become infected.
Yep.
And I think that's just what happens inside you is you get a wound inside you, and if you let that fester, it will take control of your whole body.
Yep. And life.
Aye, life is the whole thing, and I think people misconstrue the word trauma in the way that like, I think people say things like, oh, it was fucking dead traumatic, man, I missed that bus there and that, and you're like, mate, that's no trauma, you know what I mean? Like, that's that's annoyance, you know what I mean? Like, a bit of stress. Trauma is, and as we were talking to Paul earlier as well, I mean, Paul's always kind of good with these kind of stuff, and we were talking about Dan McGarvey, who is very, very well articulated on and very well read on trauma. Mm-hmm. And Dan, I apologise for the wee tweet if I didn't mean it, if that's for the thing, but
you were projecting, Sean.
Right. But I think trauma does run deep in the way that you've got a lot of people talking about different things, right? And I don't agree with everybody. No. But that doesn't mean I'm right. Many. It doesn't mean I'm right. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean my beliefs on trauma is right. It doesn't mean Dan McGarvey's right. It doesn't mean the best person I've met ever to speak about trauma is James Docherty.
Right.
I don't know if you know James.
I know the name, but I wouldn't.
I've done a podcast with James. James is basically like Scotland's Gabermati. You know what I mean? He's just kind of like, I don't think you can beat Gabermati when it comes to trauma. I've never been able to hear anybody just articulate it the way he does.
Yeah.
So what do you think, what's your kind of take on trauma after my big long rant about it?
I'm with you in a lot of what you say. As I say, it's like this buzzword that's kind of used and thrown around and all the rest of it. But I do think that everybody at some point in their life is going to experience something traumatic. A car crash, losing your mum when you're wee, something that brings in that fear, complete and utter fear, or shock to the system. And of course you can go in the deeper things, the harsher things, sexual assault and things like that. And for me, and I will just talk about my experience because that's all I can do, my understanding was that because I didn't even talk about that, I think maybe when I was drunk I told like a boyfriend at one stage in my life, but I was suppressing this through substances. So I was, sorry mum, but I was smoking weed when I was like 16, and it was daily until I was in my early 20s. And I actually remember my dad says to me, once you've lost your wee spark, and it's still to this day, I'm nearly 40 and it sticks with me. But that, for me, trauma has to be outed. Energetically, we're going to hold on to this, right? I think we can talk about it. I think we can journal about it. I think we can learn why cognitively we respond the way that we do to that traumatic experience that we had. But I think eventually, like we were saying earlier, we do have to get to a point, and I've got goosebumps coming in, we have to get to a point where we let it go, because the traumatic experience was an experience. And it's not, some people have had awful traumatic experiences, and I get it, but we can dissolve this, that coal, that hot coal, let it go. We can do that energetically. I don't think anyone can do it for you. You have to find a way, but you have to come into your awareness of, are you masking it, avoiding it, suppressing it more? Or are you actually sitting with it? For me, sit with it, grieve. Just grieve. That's what are tears? Why do we cry? And I think that for me, that's how we release. I don't think we can, you can look at like music and art and dancing and all these different, even the gym and things like that. I can understand on that cognitive level of why this makes us feel better. But I think energetically, if we've not sat with that, to then come into more a place of love rather than hate, why, blame, shame, guilt, fear, then it will affect everything. For me, as I said, it was relationships, finances. That was two huge things. And I don't mean all just romantic relationships. I had girls all the girls I went to school with, don't talk to any of them now. If I see them in the street, of course I'll say hello, but I projected. I pushed anybody out of my life because I was so angry because I wasn't dealing with it.
I know.
And I think do the steps. I think get therapy. Try meditation, try Reiki. This will help with the energetic level. It's that, I always kind of do this, it's like little cords, and it's, you're not going to go to somebody and get a cord cutting for the guy or the woman that you can't get over. They're not going to cut a cord and boom, you're healed. You have to grieve, and that's okay.
No,
but grieve quickly.
I know it's just it's such a fascinating topic, and I think I've had like Dr. Sarah Armstrong on here, who's the criminologist. We were talking about prisons, and we were talking about how angry she gets at that word trauma informed, and we've got trauma informed prison officers, we've got trauma informed police, we've got trauma, and she's like, how can they be when they're sometimes causing the trauma, right? How can they be trauma informed when you're the person causing trauma? And I understand that argument. Yeah. But also look at people and the trauma training that you get. Right. So basic. Right. And it's, as we say, we've went pretty deep here, right? And there'll probably have a lot of people. I know a lot of people probably won't get what we're talking about, right? But I'm all right with that. But I think that when you look at the way people are training and they're saying like, this is you're now trauma informed, and you're like, no, I fucking no. Like
there's no textbook thing for trauma, really.
No, it's individual. So individual. Because it's
individual experience. Every single person is going to respond. Two people can experience the same thing, but they'll respond and react differently because our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's the way you've been brought up. It's your values.
I do think the kind of verbal side is a start. Like I think for me, you know what, when I did face this, if you like, and again, that was even hitting a point through meditations, and it was always there, and I was like, oh, is this still there? And I was so angry still, and I didn't want to let it go because I'd suppressed it for so long that when I'd started facing it, it was like, this is huge, and it is huge. But one of the biggest shifts for me was when I told my family, and it was sad, but my relationships were better now. It's like, and I understand they're probably all going through their own processing part of it, which I'm okay with. But for me on my journey, just speaking about it, just saying, this happened to me, it sort of gave that penny drop aha moment of, that's why you're the way that you are. And it's the understanding, and then that then opens you up to other people, and then it opens up to people being able to help. I think connection is massive.
Huge.
I think we need each other. Huge. And somebody, as you say, will relate, and this is why if people come to me that I'm like, I'm not for you.
Aye. I know, Stephanie, I think it's I think you're a testament to yourself and the way that you go about it, and I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's been brilliant. I'm interested to know, you don't need to answer this if you don't, were you able to forgive that person?
I think so. I think I still have fear. I still have triggers. I'm triggered quite a lot with it. I only just a couple of years ago, through an anger, I actually did march into the police station and I reported it, and I stood up in High Court in November. and goosebumps. Again, you know, this regular meditation, I came out and I was like, I was so proud of you. I was so proud of me because, you know, I didn't let the emotions come in. I didn't let fear. I just spoke my truth. And that was fine. Nothing came of it. You know, this is historical. There's not enough evidence and all the rest. Whether I would say that I would see this man and give him a hug and say, do you know what, thanks, because without you I wouldn't have went on to this journey. I wouldn't have. And I get it. But I definitely have a kind of shrug shoulders of it now, where I'm like, well, it was what it was. And again, I think to simplify all of it, it's taught me more and more the importance of what our children teach us, just being in the now. Because it was then. And it did affect me. And I did go on to mad healing journeys where I was on my knees, greeting and bawling my heart out and angry, mushrooms that came up through that as well. That wasn't the main thing in the mushrooms though. But this thing I'm constantly trying to teach myself now is to not be with the stories, because the stories aren't you. The trauma is not you. It's just an experience you had, and now we let it go and be in the now. So now...
You don't need to keep experiencing it.
You don't need to keep experiencing it over and over and over again. It's like... I think, you know, as humans again, I think we do. I think people get caught in that release because they're feeling for the first time. If you've numbed, if you've suppressed, and then you've got somebody who's, I mean, you see some wild things on socials with this spiritual community and people sobbing and wailing and greeting, you can get addicted to that. I see people getting addicted to cold water therapy. I see, you know, and I'm like, but all of that's avoidance.
Culty stuff and that as well. Like
that's another story. But, you know, to kind of, the word forgiveness, I will be honest, there's definitely still a pang of struggle in me.
See, I'm the same as you.
There's still a pang of struggle in me. However, there is and I've got goosebumps now, there is a massive gratitude and love for the whole thing of what this part of my journey has brought me. And I think that's why it says to you, you know, it is something that I wanted to bring up today, because I do want, I feel a lot of my clients that come to me and, you know, through the readings and stuff, this can come up. And I'll always ask, do you mind me going personal with you? But there's something in me where I'm like, I pulled myself out of this. And I did have help along the way. But I'm at this place now where, as I said, there's joy, there's peace, there's happiness, there's no anger, there's no fear of money, there's no things going on in the background that are really that suppressed thing. But what I want to say to people is, should you have gone through something similar to that, there are ways to get this out. There are ways to move on and let it go. Like, is that? It's like, whether I would say, go and just forgive them and love them from who they are. No, you have to forgive you. You have to forgive yourself for how you responded. You have to forgive yourself for how you reacted, for how you were lost, and then come back to a place of gratitude of, well, here I am now.
I mean, there's certain people in my life that, I mean, if I heard that something bad had happened to them, I probably wouldn't have cared, you know what I mean? But it's one of these things where, like, have I forgiven that person? I think so, and I think I'm very similar to you. Like, I've forgiven. Like, there's some people that don't deserve some people don't want my forgiveness. Do you know what I mean? And I understand that as well. Like, some people don't care, hate me and don't want my forgiveness, and that's more of probably I probably feel more unfortunate for that, because I that's not something that I like. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't sit right with me, but that's their thing. They can hate me all they want. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the people I hate that done wrong to me, I feel as if I've been able to forgive them on a level. And as you say, I would, if I seen them in the street, I certainly wouldn't be going up and hugging them and saying, oh, thank you and stuff. But an interesting thing that did happen, because we're coming up to an end here, we could speak all day here, Stephanie. I did go to LJ, right, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but LJ did do something, and it was like, it was a hatred I had for a person, and after that session I didn't feel that hatred. I genuinely didn't, and I don't know, like, I don't know what that was, like, if that was, I can only say my experience with that, do you know what I mean?
But I'm going to come back to what I said to you before we started recording. You went to LJ, you created that. Something on a subconscious level, you told yourself that what LJ was going to do was going to remove that hatred. So it was still self. It wasn't LJ. She was the vessel. She was the channel. She would tell you that, I'm sure.
Aye, no.
You know?
Aye, she would not.
But you still manifested that and created that for self. So it was still you doing it. Where it comes to, for me, with the consistent meditation, that need for other people to show you how, or other people to assist, lessons.
I know you. Aye, I know.
You're knowing. It's your knowing that you.
Aye, but well, if they're divine, you're divine, aren't you?
Everyone
so it's
is.
like
All of it is.
and like it's the hatred thing. It was like it's certain people. You probably know. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a burning hatred. Like it's a like when you think about them, it's like a kind of rage hatred. I don't have that anymore. That did get taken away that day, and it for whatever reason, like maybe I'm not supposed to know that. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I don't. When I hear that the certain people's names, I don't get that trigger. Like, the same way as I did. Do you know what I mean? Like
because
before.
you sat with the hatred.
Aye.
You know, I've been on my knees, bawling my heart out, crying, I was screaming. Why? Why did you do that? Why would somebody do something so? You know, I've been there, all that anger. But that is your grieving. That, you know, when we go to the basic grieving stages.
It's a processing it.
Yeah. And that's just one of the phases of it, is what I would say. But I still believe that there's no such thing as somebody magically pulling something out of you. They're just allowing you to meet something that's already in you. Because it's already in all of us.
No, I totally believe we're all divine, and we do have, we can all kind of get to a place where, the world needs healing, do you know what I mean? It doesn't even need more division, do you know what I mean? It needs to be healed. And
everybody should just meditate. Can you imagine how peaceful it would be?
I think there's, by the way, you'd be maybe interested in this, there's definitely a prison in Thailand, I think, or Tibet or something.
And they do it.
They do it, and the reoffending rate is zero. Like, it's not zero, but we've got like an 80% reoffending rate. So
there's a scientific thing as well, and even NASA, I'm sure, done it. There's actual experiments that have gone on. So say in Cumbernauld, right? Cumbernauld, that's where we're from. But if 1% of Cumbernauld meditated every single day, the crime rates would go down.
Aye.
Like, because that is the butterfly effect.
It's the collective consciousness.
It's the energy, it's the vibration, as you're talking about, it's all of this. And so if we're sitting there and we're just constantly, you know, so 1% is all that's needed for huge, huge shifts in humanity.
Aye.
And even in China now, you know, there's no detention or things like that. They get the kids to meditate. You sit with it.
Aye. I know that was like the whole pure next bit of the thing. Was like, I know. All that. But what I'm going to do, Stephanie, is just obviously I always kind of give the guest the last message. So just for like anybody that's listening to this and right through, what's your wee message for people? And you can also show the drawing that you done for me, the great drawing.
No, it's in the car.
It's in the car. Well, we'll get a photo later.
I think if you can, hand on heart, say that, you know, you're actually in a really, really peaceful state in your life, and, you know, you're constantly striving to push yourself out your comfort zone, and you're confident in where you're going, and you're expressing and all the rest of that. If you can say that, amazing. I did this at one of my events the other night, and out of 50 people, only 4 people put their hand up. And I was like, there you go. So, should you have experienced something similar to me? Should you have experienced something similar to you? Should there be these stories and experiences, traumatic events in your life that you cannot seem to shift? If you're stuck in patterns, you're projecting, you're angry, you're snappy, then there's ways to remove this, but you have to come to self. That's all I would say, is try and recognise it. Try and recognise your triggers and try and recognise the patterns. That's where I would start. What triggered you? And then, like you said earlier, why? Why? I done that actually a couple of weeks ago. It's funny that you said it. I don't journal. I'm not big on journaling. But this day I did, because I was stuck again. Why? And you know, the last thing I wrote, because I don't believe I'm good enough. And I went,
Aye.
You know, sometimes we just need to pull ourselves out of our comfort zone to sit with it, be vulnerable, and then you can let it all go. But you know, life can be good.
Definitely.
Life is good.
Aye. No, definitely.
Is what I say to people.
But listen, honestly, Stephanie, the Mindful Medium, absolutely brilliant to have you. It's been fascinating, and I'm pretty sure we'll meet past again. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant.